some people looked at that and go, this guy must have been something. And a lot of people had told me that he was a Hall of Fame guy originally, but it was before my time. So I believe he's a Hall of Fame guy. Edge I voted for, and I will always vote for. Edge had more 4-star matches on pay-per-views that I saw than someone did a list, and I don't remember if he was number 1 or Shawn Michaels was number 1, but they were number 1 and they were number 2 in history, and I think Kurt actually is probably right in there with them too. But the person who gave me the list didn't count TNA because they just didn't want to look through the TNA shows, but Kurt was up there even before the TNA run, and Kurt's had a lot in TNA. But the point is there's been, pay-per-view isn't the be-all and end-all, but if you had more 4-star matches on pay-per-view than any other person who ever lived, or if you're close with Shawn Michaels, that is a hell of a credential, and he was a draw. He did carry the SmackDown brand. Great promo, really, great promo, great heel. Not as good a babyface, obviously. I think he crosses the line. I know some people don't. I think he does, and one of the best performers of the last 10 years. Not the best, but you don't have to be the best of all time to be in there. I think he's good in enough areas that he gets there. And Sting, I tell you what, with Sting, I just, so many people are so fervent for him, and I just want someone to give me the reason. Brian, you said it's because he's Sting. That's the argument for Moolah. And I'll tell you what, when I first was going to do the Hall of Fame, Moolah was in, and I was actually talked out of Moolah because it was okay, why? And I didn't have a good reason. Well, she's Moolah. Well, that wasn't really, when I thought about, well, she's Moolah, I started thinking, you know what? That's a lousy reason because she's Moolah. So, I understand people who grew up in that era and saw him as a childhood hero, but, I had my childhood heroes, and again, I wouldn't vote for most of them for the Hall of Fame. Rocky Johnson was and Rocky Johnson was a better wrestler than Sting, and he had success in more places than Sting in a sense. It was a different world. You can't really compare them. And Sting was a bigger national name, of course. And Rocky Johnson's not even on the ballot. And Rocky Johnson was the first African American champion in many territories and things like that. And again, best drop kick in the business, or one of the best in the history of the business. And you look at Rocky Johnson's career; it's real impressive. I'm just saying that. But again, I wouldn't vote for him for the Hall of Fame. He's not even on the ballot anymore. Sting is a better candidate because he was a bigger star than that. But that's childhood, a guy who you saw as a kid. At least I saw, Rocky Johnson and filled buildings. And I did.
Well, there it is. Yeah, there it is.
And Sting did have a run where the buildings were full, but that was, people go, Sting was the reason for '97. He was not. There was a lot of reasons for '97, and by '98 was bigger than '97. And '98, Sting had already faded down, and Bill Goldberg was the guy. And I wouldn't put Bill Goldberg in either, but that's a longevity issue. But Bill Goldberg was much bigger, than Sting ever was. People just don't look at him the same because it's childhood, and also Goldberg gets negative remarks because he walked away, and as did Sting for that matter. But Sting came back. And Bill Goldberg never came back. But Sting had more years than Bill Goldberg. He's a much better candidate than Bill Goldberg. But yeah, again, I'm still waiting for that argument of what makes Sting cross the line. He's close. He's close. He was a big star. But as a worker, was he a Hall of Fame worker? No, certainly not. There's not. You couldn't even argue that with me. He was a good. He had some good matches, but I saw him in crap matches too, and great matches. Depend on the opponent, depend on his mood. But Hall of Fame pure worker, no. Hall of Fame draw, not a chance. So what? Why does he go in? Because WCW pushed him when they were a bottom promotion. Then the guy who. Why isn't Ron Fuller in? Ron Fuller was the top guy in Alabama for years and years and years and years. But so why isn't he in? Or why isn't a guy who was guys who had 20-year runs, or Sting didn't have a 20-year run, but a guy who had a 10-year run in a territory as a main eventer of a lousy, Wilbur Snyder. Wilbur Snyder might actually be a good example, and he was of someone who's equivalent in the sense of, he was a big-time national star in the TV era, and Wilbur falls short to me, and he's on the borderline and falls short, and Wilbur Snyder in Indianapolis. You know, Dick the Bruiser was number 1 and Wilbur Snyder was number 2. Historically, in that territory, Sting was in WCW. Realistically, Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan were bigger stars, and Sting might be number 3 in the WCW era, not the Jim Crockett Promotions era. So number 3 in a territory that had 2 good years and a lot of shitty years.
There it is. I mean, that's a really good way to put it. You know, number 3 in a territory, for a team or for a business that had two good years. And when he had the 2 good years, he wasn't the key guy. He had a hell of a supporting team that actually put him in a position that no other. You know, that thing in '98. He was put in a position where he really didn't have to do anything.
That was 97.
And he was built up until the 97. Yeah, he was built up until the very end. And when it came to produce, they pulled the rug out from under him. Hogan screwed him over, but he wasn't ready either.
Yeah.
He didn't do his part, and so all that doesn't do it. I mean, it's those criteria of how you presented yourself, your ring work, and then your drawing power, and none of them quite get there.
Yeah, the one thing he has going for him, and at this is what would help is, I think that him in TNA, the one thing in TNA, and again, I don't say he never drew in TNA because he drew a couple of, he first came in, he did help the ratings, the first couple of appearances, and he did help the buy rate the first couple of times, and burned out, because for a lot of reasons.
And that wasn't strong either. I mean, he moved the needle, but he didn't move the needle strongly even when he did.
Well, and he didn't keep the needle moving. He moved it. It was like when Kurt came in. I mean, Kurt drew a bunch of big buy rates, and then a year later he did with Samoa. Kurt and Samoa Joe drew some buy rates, but it wasn't like they. Now Kurt's on the show and it doesn't mean anything. But I think with the thing with Sting though is he does have the aura when you watch him now. He does have the aura of an all-time great. And there is something to that. I don't know that it gets you in the Hall of Fame, but I mean, I see it. I see it when I watch Sting, and you see the reaction.
That's where I disagree with you. I mean, I'm like, you see the reaction from the people that are there, but there are not that many people who are there.
Oh, you're right. You're right. And I mean, I remember when they did. Remember when they did that Bound for Glory from Atlanta, and I thought they're bringing Sting and Scott Steiner and all these guys back to Atlanta, and they sold no tickets, and it was really it's like this was his number 1 town, and he's going back because the nostalgia thing. It's like that nostalgia thing, the first time with the nostalgia thing. I mean, you bring that guy back. I mean, he may not sustain it, but you can get the one house out of him. That's what and he couldn't even do that. So I guess that's a negative too. But I see the way that he comes across. But still, he comes across when you watch him to me like a top guy. Now I'm not saying that and he always had a certain level of charisma. So I don't know. I ask you real quick, Gary Hart.
Yeah, I was just looking at